December 12th, 2022, he fell about 20 feet while preparing for a training exercise inside the quarters of Rescue 2. When you're a part of the first responder world, you kind of tuck away in your head and your heart that there are things that may happen. You almost feel like it's more important to just live in the moment and enjoy what life has to offer, because in reality, nobody really wants to talk about what happens when they die. Because I've had people reach out to me and I've shared our story, and I'll tell you that organ donation was the light in the darkest hours of my life. And I blurted out to the hospital staff while I was there, I was like, he's an organ donor. Something in my heart told me they needed to know, and they're like, oh, you're crazy, we don't need this right now. I knew it was something he was passionate about and he felt strongly about.
Welcome to Responder Resilience, along with Bonnie Rumley, LCSW, EMT. I'm David Dashinger. In this episode, our guest is Kristina Moon. She's the president of the Billy Moon Foundation, which supports, advocates, and brings awareness to organ donation. Kristina's husband, firefighter William P. Billy Moon II, lost his life after a fall while preparing for a training exercise in the quarters of Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. We invite you to like and subscribe: YouTube, Responder Resilience; Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV; LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and go to our website, respondertv.com, for past episodes and guest information. This episode is made possible by Strobes & Moore, a New England-based leading distributor, installer, and servicer of emergency vehicle equipment. Visit strobesandmore.com to sign up for special offers and receive 10% off your next order. This episode is made possible by the First Responder Center for Excellence. Discover more at firstrespondercenter.org and connect with us on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We'll be right back to speak with Kristina after this.
In this family, more of us die by our own hands than by the hazards of the job.
In this family, up to a quarter of 911 telecommunicators have symptoms of post-traumatic stress.
In this family, our mental health and wellness are in crisis,
while responders are quietly suffering.
In this family, many struggle with job-related stress,
burnout, trauma, sleep disruptions, substance abuse,
and relationship problems.
In this family, we can help the helpers.
With vital information and resources,
resilient strategies,
and success stories of overcoming the obstacles.
In this family, no one is alone.
Welcome to Responder Resilience with co-hosts retired Lieutenant David Dashinger, Dr. Stacy Raymond, and Bonnie Rumley, LCSW, EMTB.
We'd like to welcome Kristina Moon. Kristina is the president of the Billy Moon Foundation, which supports, advocates, and brings awareness to organ donation. Prior to that, she spent 20 years in the field of elementary education, and now she overcomes the grief of losing her husband in December of 2022. She finds herself educating others on the importance of having the hard conversations with loved ones as she shares her family's story around the country and through the foundation. As we said earlier, Kristina's husband, William P. Billy Moon II, lost his life after a fall preparing for a training exercise in the quarters of FDNY Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. And Kristina prides herself on spreading this important message, celebrating the life of her husband and keeping his memory alive, especially for their two children. Kristina, welcome to Responder Resilience.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being willing to share your story with us today. We're really grateful to you and thankful that you trust us to share your story.
I know I'm very happy to be here. I think it's important to share.
Thank you. So on this show, we like to honor all first responders, and in the spirit of honoring those who've dedicated their lives to this kind of service and some who have succumbed to it, could you please tell our listeners about your husband, Billy Moon, and who he was?
So I always start with he was a big personality because he was 6'4" and you couldn't miss him when he walked into a room. Billy spent 21 years on the FDNY. He spent 20 years in Ladder 133 in South Jamaica, Queens, which is a pretty busy house. But he also was and then he went over to Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. He was there for almost a year. But he also spent 28 years as a volunteer firefighter in our hometown of Islip, New York, which he was also chief of department for 2 years. So we kind of live and breathe fire in our house. We have two kids. My daughter Brianna is 12 and my son Colin is 10. He is a fire buff, through and through. And, it's kind of, I always tell people he was my best friend. We were friends for 9 years before we started dating. And, it was a happy home. It was a fun day. We had a fun dynamic in our home. But on December 12th, 2022, he fell about 20 feet while preparing for a training exercise inside the quarters of Rescue 2.
A huge, huge loss for you and your family, and for the FDNY family. How did you personally navigate this kind of, or how did you process this loss?
I could tell you that on December 12th, 2022, it snowed outside. I could tell you that I texted him saying I should have put the Christmas decorations up to get a picture because you never know if we're going to get any more snow. I spoke to him, you could kind of remember every little detail. And the thing I remember the most is when I walked into the hospital, they came to get me when I was at work. And I walk into the hospital, I see a sea of firefighters there waiting.
Nobody, I didn't want to look them in the eye. They didn't want to look me in the eye because nobody truly had details yet. And that community was there and they are still here. I feel like I couldn't get rid of them even if I tried. Between the whole FDNY, 2 firehouses, plus a volunteer firehouse, we've been remarkably blessed and lucky to have them in our lives.
I'd like to hear more about how his legacy really inspired you to create this mission. Could you please talk about that with us?
Yeah, so when Billy fell on December 12th, he would spend about a week in the hospital. He went through multiple procedures, intensive interventions. And unfortunately, after about a week, we weren't seeing the improvement that we thought we would see.
And one thing that I remember, and I blurted out to the hospital staff while I was there, I was like, he's an organ donor. And it was a few days in, and something in my heart told me they needed to know. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. We don't need this right now. We don't need to know that. But I knew it was something he was passionate about and he felt strongly about. So I wanted to make sure they knew, God forbid we were in that situation. And sadly, we were in that situation, and Billy would go on to save the lives of 5 others. He donated his heart, his liver, his lungs, and both of his kidneys. And his liver and his lungs went to 2 retired members of the FDNY, one who had 9/11 related lung disease.
From that, this organic process of change kind of happened. I realized everyone felt organ donation was important, but nobody really talked about it. And I was being asked to go speak. I started speaking. I went to the Proby classes. And, really just trying to get the message out there. It not only, helps improve the lives of others, but it also keeps Billy's name and legacy alive. So kind of like my therapy in a way.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and maybe we can circle back to some of that, sort of the coping and the ways that you found some peace in this journey. I wanted to first go to the conversations, because you touched on that you have to have these conversations, or it would be helpful to have these conversations. Can you kind of get into what are some of the hard conversations we need to have, especially as first responders, with our significant others, and especially preferences having to do with organ donation?
When you're a part of the first responder world, you kind of tuck away in your head and your heart that there are things that may happen.
But it's, you almost feel like it's more important to just live in the moment and enjoy what life has to offer. Because in reality, nobody really wants to talk about what happens when they die. You want the cupcakes and the roses and the rainbows. But I'm so proud to say that Billy and I did have these conversations. I can remember sitting I'm standing in the dining room and he's in the living room, and he looks at me and he goes, "Are you an organ donor?" And I was like, I would. I don't think it's on my license though. And he's like, "Well, why not?" And I changed my license. And he did that to people at the kitchen table. And to me, that's a hard conversation, because even though you don't want to talk about what happens when you die, it's just this one small piece that could make your loved ones' lives a little bit easier if they are put into that situation. Because I've had people reach out to me and I've shared our story, and I'll tell you that organ donation was the light in the darkest hours of my life. And I tried to explain to them, and they're like, "Thank you so much." And they go to their loved ones and they're going to donate a loved one's organ. And then a family member comes in and goes, "No, this isn't what we don't know if they wanted this. We're not doing that." And they don't donate the organs, because now there's conflict between the family. And the last thing you want is conflict when you're trying to begin a grieving process that's not easy to begin with.
In the world of emergency response, every moment counts. That's why you need equipment you can trust. Strobes & More is here to ensure you're always ready to respond. Born and bred in the USA with 30 years of experience, Strobes & Moore is a New England-based leading distributor, installer, and servicer of emergency vehicle equipment. From police to fire, EMS to public works, we've got you covered. We partner with top manufacturers like Wayland, ProGuard, Sound Off Signal, Havas, Federal Signal, and many more. We offer a robust inventory of over 2,000 SKUs from 40-plus brands, guaranteeing you'll find what you need. Our online store is easy to use, and with nationwide distribution, you'll get our products within 48 hours wherever you are. For local agencies in Rhode Island and Connecticut, our specialized installation services deliver an unmatched upfitting experience. We do the hard work so you can focus on saving lives. Join our dealer network for preferred pricing and exclusive benefits. Discover why Strobes & Moore is the trusted name in emergency vehicle equipment. Visit strobesandmore.com to sign up for special offers and receive 10% off your next order.
So do you think that something that people could do to be prepared, even though no one wants to prepare for these things in the first responder world, do you think it is important, though, to have these conversations about organ donation and end-of-life care so that your grief process is not interfered with or thwarted because of some of that family tension that can arise?
Yeah, I presented to the firefighters, here in the city, and one of the things I talked to them about recently, it's everything I need to know. There's a saying, everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten. Well, everything I need to know I learned in probie school. And starting in probie school and having these conversations and explaining the difficulty that could arise. And even if you're not married, and you're young and you're excited and you're on the job and you're just ready to do life, it's still important to think about that, because in the long run, it will help you, it'll help your family. It's, again, hard to think about, but you just signed up for a really difficult job as well. It kind of comes with the territory. And I think if we normalize the conversation, it won't be as difficult. And it also comes with, in those relationships of those that your loved ones or new relationships, you're bringing someone new into your life. It's important to let them know about that, because they do need to know what they're getting into. And those conversations are a part of it.
I hope you don't mind me asking this, but I'm wondering if the organ donation process helped your children as well, just to know that their father's life was able to go on and help more people, and his organs are living and breathing inside of other people as we speak.
It's really funny you say that, because we just watched the new Beetlejuice a couple of nights ago. And I don't know, we ended up we talked about how Dad would have loved to watch the movie with us, because, we have our family movie nights. And my son said to me, he's got a way with words for a 10-year-old. He's a little too wise. And he's like, he goes, Dad's like kind of still living, Mom, right? Because, his heart's still beating, his lungs are still breathing, and, his liver still functions, and then and people have his kidneys, and he's right. And they both have said that they hope the people that we know, he hopes they all live to be 100, because that means Dad got to, a piece of Dad did too. And we talked to Billy's lung, liver, and heart recipients. So it's really exciting to know them. And I'll never forget, you learn all this information, but one of the profound moments was when I met Billy's heart recipient, because I didn't know until after I met him, but in order to get someone's heart, they have to be of a similar stature to you. And it makes sense now that I know that.
Right.
But all of a sudden I'm waiting to meet this man, and he comes out, and Rich is 6'3" and Billy was 6'4". So it's like these profound moments. And my daughter said, she's like, I was listening to the heartbeat, and at first it was a little too slow, and then it started picking up, and then I just knew it was Dad. So I think it is absolutely been a huge part of the healing process. And I also think donor families sometimes don't embrace it as much, because you're going through your own trauma that a lot of people tuck away into the shadows to deal with that trauma and that loss and devastation. But these relationships they're amazing. And we don't talk daily, but we talk once in a while, and we, have a text thread, and I know how they're doing, and they send me pictures of their travels, and just knowing that, and knowing that impact of Billy's passion in general, could do that. You would never know any of these people were near death almost 2 years ago.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story, Kristina. I think as first responders, we don't really talk about or focus on, what a high risk profession we're in. We kind of minimize it. We certainly minimize it with our loved ones because we don't want them worrying about it, or we don't feel like they can handle some of the details of the situations we get into. But it's a reality. And so with that in mind, like, how should first responder couples prepare for a worst case scenario, like the kind of loss that you've experienced? Is there some steps you would recommend?
I think the most important step is definitely having the conversation. You don't want to have to do it, but like you said, you don't want to worry us, but we know, most of us know what we signed up for. So I think that conversation is important, especially if it's someone who wants to be an organ donor. They can not only have it on their license, but they can go online and register, because sometimes a significant other could be in a fog in those moments, and everyone handles those situations so different. They may not remember the conversation. I would have never remembered the conversation had I not been in the position to have to remember that conversation. And, we all have a person, right? And even though we have our significant other, and for many of us, they're our best friend and our closest confidant. But when you're a part of a first responder family, there's always that mutual partner, 24 partner, someone that you work closely with. You kind of maybe want to have a conversation with one of them, because it will help. The more people that understand who you are and what you want out of life, I feel like the easier the whole process would be. But starting with that significant other or a parent, someone closest to you in your immediate family, I feel is definitely the best way to go about it. And writing somewhere is definitely going to help too.
I think that's a great point you just made, because I would probably, when I was actively an EMT, I probably would have been much more open with my partner about going into a scene or what could happen to us getting into this right now than I would my family, right? So it makes sense to me what you said about telling your partners about your wishes, because those are the people actually in our lives that we talk the most about death with, because we're faced with it so much together and we bond over it. So I think that's such a smart thing that you just said. And if people can't bring themselves to discuss with their spouses or their parents or their siblings, at least if they could let their closest partners know, those people will be right there with their family if something happens.
Yeah, and trust me, they don't go away. They're there. They come to my kids' first day of school. They come to sporting events, but they do know. And the stories, when you end up having those connections with the partners and, those that you were closest with, it also brings together this way of life that you didn't even see your significant other a part of. And knowing that they know so much, and they know, maybe even just as much or sometimes more than you in certain scenarios, it just builds the family dynamic also, I think.
Kristina, can you speak to some of the stats as far as who were the numbers of people in the U.S. registered as donors? And maybe a little more in terms of a statewide number. Is that something you can share with us?
I could tell you nationally, there's over 103,000 people on the organ donation list. Mm-hmm. One person can save, 8 lives and improve up to 75 more with tissue donation. And also, only 3 in 1,000 people will die in a way in which they can donate their organs. So, yeah, I like a good medical drama. Grey's Anatomy happens to be my show of choice. And they lied to me, right? There's no magic medevac that throws all these organs on dry ice and just sprinkles them across the country. In reality, it's about location. It starts with match, and it starts with location. The kidneys can survive 2 days on dialysis before they have to be transplanted. A heart and lungs, they need to go pretty much from OR to OR, within like an hour time period. So if the more people in our communities that are registered, the more, people that you're going to be able to help. Otherwise you can lose organs because there's not somebody within that close proximity of you. People, even access to transplant centers and things like that. I've been learning a lot about it. Communities, and the more people registered is obviously the best way to go, even though over 80% of families will say yes if they're put into the position to donate someone's organs. The whole point, if you circle back to that hard conversation in the mix of the statistics, is you don't want to have to worry about that. you're automatically helping. And to me, first responders are innately selfless. So doing that is exactly right up their alley and why I've spent so much time with our first responder community. But as far as the states, I don't have the state statistics off the top of my head, but I can be proud to say that New York State, it was towards the bottom of the list. We just finally hit 50% as our registered organ donors, and the national average is about 62% nationwide in each state.
As firefighters and first responders, we're brilliant at the basics. We master the art of stretching the line, and we excel at being there for those who need us most. Yet even the best of us can be caught off guard. We sometimes face unexpected challenges like injury, cancer, or post-traumatic stress symptoms. But you're not alone. The First Responder Center for Excellence is here to equip you with the tools and resources you need to stay informed and prepared. We help you focus on staying strong, safe, fit, and resilient. Optimize your performance with cutting-edge health, wellness, and science information, from fitness to nutrition, medical evaluations to behavioral health, cancer awareness to cardiac health. We've got you covered. Remember, we're stronger together. Discover more at firstrespondercenter.org and connect with us on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. The First Responder Center for Excellence. Equip yourself with excellence for every call.
You know, I had a question for you. You mentioned there's a checkbox when we get our license. Do we want to be an organ donor or not? Are there any further educational processes that you're aware of anywhere in the country? Because it seems to me that's a missed opportunity. You know, I may know nothing about organ donation, and I'm faced with that question at the DMV. So is there room for change in that simple mechanism to educate? And are you aware of anything that currently does that?
You know, there's a lot of like Donate Life. Obviously, it's the biggest. Donate Life America is kind of the umbrella, and there's all of these other Donate Lives throughout the country. Depending on where you are in the country, kind of depends on who provides the education for it.
So without getting into like crazy detail, but there's 56 organ procurement organizations throughout the country that are overseen by UNOS and the federal government. And they are the ones in charge of assigning where organs go, matching them and transporting them and testing, those that are on life support. But how everybody manages it is very different. And I'm learning that it's a system with a lot of work that can be done. And I'm happy to say that, I've developed some really great friendships with people at places like NYU and North Shore University Hospital that are local to us that are starting to pave the way to change that look and change that conversation. Because even in high schools, some OPOs, some, Donate Lives, they send people into high schools and have conversations and programs before they get their license, but other people don't. And I think it also comes down to resources and the allocation of those resources, the allocation of the funds provided. It's definitely something I've thought of, and I think it's something we could work on, because there are the other countries in this world that have, I think Spain is a 75% registration because they're an opt-out country. So you have to say, no, I don't want to be an organ donor. So there's definitely work to be done, and that education is truly important, because you're right.
You're 16, you're going to the light, you're going to the DMV. You want to get on the road. Like, you're not thinking about anything else except I'm going to pass this test, I'm going to get on the road, and I'm going to go. And there's so much more to know about it.
Yeah, it was a great question and a great answer. Thanks for that. And Kristina, kind of give us a little more insight into the Billy Moon Foundation. What does it do? What does it partner with? And what's the mission?
So really our mission is to provide the support, advocacy, and awareness for organ donation, which has been me. I've been to 6 states so far this year, spreading our story. State number 7 is in January. I think 8 is in February. I'm going to the Ignite conference for the Western Fire Chiefs. So I'm really excited about that. We've been spreading our story, letting people know, especially in our first responder community. But we're also providing some financial assistance to 2 of our local transplant centers for food, travel, and lodging
for people, whether it's a donor or a recipient family. I'm learning that people from upstate New York need to come down to New York City because that's the best center for them to get a transplant, but they're not coming down here and they're getting sicker at home because they can't afford to come down to New York City. And that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen to anyone. there's even other parts of the country where people, you have to be able to get to a transplant center in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you can't get an organ from when they call you. And, hopefully we get to that point where we can help people nationwide. If they need to be there, they need to be there. So right now we're partnered with NYU and North Shore University Hospital here on the Long Island, New York City area. And we're hoping that every year we're going to expand, who we're working with. And they let us know if there's a family in need. And, it's not a huge financial, support, but it's something to help them. And as time goes on, I hope that financial, that monetary amount grows, because we don't want anyone to have to be worried about getting their organ. We want them to have the access when they need it, or the donor families that need to be there to say goodbye to their loved ones.
They don't need to sleep on a hospital couch. Sleep in a hotel bed and then come back in the morning so you can have your head with you and you can understand what's going on with those doctors and the staff there.
And do you feel like the first responder organizations and associations that you reach out to are looking to hear this message and willing to have you come in and welcome you in?
Yeah, they've been great. Everyone's come up to me, and, every time I go somewhere, it ends up leading to somewhere else. And I feel like it's a compliment and a path I never thought I would be on in life. But at least I know that it truly is a message that people feel is important.
And like I said, everything I need to know, I learned in Proby school. And we talk about, donor days, and, everyone's like, yeah, we can really get this to our membership. We really feel like this is important. Even the International Association of Firefighters had several conversations with them and talking about things of what we can do to help, everyone understand the domino effect of what organ donation can do.
Well, I have to say to you that we focus a lot on the trauma and the grief in our line of work, but what you're really shining a light on for us is post-traumatic growth. And what do you do with your pain? And what do you do so that your loved one doesn't die in vain? And you are such a great example of someone who's taking their pain and their grief and helping the world and enacting what they're going through. And because of that, you're changing so many people's lives.
Thank you. I tell people, never judge another person sad, because just because someone is not grieving the way that you think they should be grieving, it doesn't mean they're not grieving.
Yes.
And Billy and I, we lived a life of celebration. We believed in the importance of celebrating someone's life. And I feel like these ways are just ways that I keep celebrating him and who he was as a person, as a first responder. People come up to me all the time like, oh, I worked with your husband, or I was a volunteer with your husband. And they have such great things to say, that I'm not only talking about the legacy left behind, but just who he was as a person.
And I think it's important. And that judging someone sad and the grief process, it looks so different for everybody that I don't take it for granted at all.
Well, another conversation we don't have often generally in our culture, but also on this show, is talking about single parenting. Could you share a little bit about your journey as a single parent and sort of like the highs and the lows and the things you've found that have helped you get through it?
Yeah, you become the good cop, the bad, and the bad cop all in the same breath. It's the stress part of it is there's no longer go ask your father. Like, I don't know, just go ask your father. Or that time apart. My kids are very active. They're athletes. They're active in their school communities. And the hardest part is kind of coming up with that routine. And what is that structure going to look like? Not that I don't have support. I have family support. We have friends and, firefighters and everyone. But you still need to learn how to go from being 4 with, 2 adults and 2 kids to being 1 adult with 2 kids. And you want to be there, but I can only divide myself in so many places. So one of my missions this year is trying to be as present as possible with them. Making sure I can get to as many sporting events as possible. My son plays roller hockey, but it's like a 6-month season with 30 plus games. So it was a hard conversation for him, but he understood in the long run that if mom has to miss a sport, I'm going to miss a hockey game to go to Brienne's soccer game because you have this many more football, hockey games left, and I think we're finally getting into a groove with that. I did not go back to work because I'm fortunate enough right now that I can be home with them and I could run to the school if somebody's sick. I can go to the class party and just, be there as much as possible. But it's hard. It's stressful. There are days that I drive in my car and say I need to go grab myself a Starbucks, and I have my moment. I can yell in the car and bring myself back together. And then I come home and, and sometimes they see me sad because I think that's important too. I want them to know that mom is also sad. It didn't just, it happened to all of us, but we all need our moments. So if I need my moment and they happen to be home, I figure out a way to separate myself and I come back. But it every day is different. We always take it one day at a time. There's good days, bad days, and crappy days.
Mm-hmm. Well, and those are the parts of grief. And it's another thing people don't really want to talk about unless they're faced with it. But David was right. We don't talk enough about single parenthood. It happens a lot, actually, in the first responder world, not just through death of a spouse, but divorce, separation, and all of those other reasons. And it makes life a lot harder for people. So we really commend you, Kristina, because you are a very strong person and you have those moments, but you're a wonderful example for anyone listening as to how one can cope and try to move through everything with their children.
I really appreciate it. When you talk about, we talk about hard conversation, it's also because Billy and I had hard conversations and we talked about that kind of stuff. I think also, hard conversations with sitting down and telling my kids, that dad's not coming home, and being there and being a part of that, and then looking at them and knowing that this is that moment that we're going to be the three of us. I think it's, like you said, it's not talked about enough, and you don't see it that way. But when you have the conversations to talk about what it's going to look like, or even just honesty with my kids, I think was one of the most important things. I always told them the truth. I always told them what was happening. I may have been general about it because they didn't need, certain dirty details they don't need to know. But I would have never been able to keep that many lies straight, or little, white lies or fibs or exaggerations when it came down to the questions that they wanted to ask me, in the long run. And even if it's a divorced family, wanting to know questions, just the honesty with my children, I think was really important. And it helped us greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Introducing FDTs, the only gourmet tea crafted with first responders and their families in mind. Proudly firefighter and veteran owned, our collection of gourmet organic teas is uniquely designed to honor those who are on the front lines to protect our communities. At FDTs, we believe in quality. That's why we source the freshest organic tea available, offering you the most popular flavors that not only excite your taste buds, but also bring comfort and relaxation to your daily life. Indulge in our specialty blends: classic Earl Grey, soothing chamomile, vibrant green tea with ginger root, decadent chocolate salty caramel black tea, and robust Irish breakfast. FDTs makes for a special and unique gift, perfect for any occasion or season. Taste the difference and show your appreciation for the rescuers in your life with FDTs, exclusively available on FDTs.com and in our Etsy store, Fire Department Prints.
You touched on this, Kristina, too, and I'm appreciating you as the child of a single parent, in recognizing how difficult it can be sometimes to get that self-care piece in there. And do you have any other pieces of that you can share for people out there who may be single parents? Like, how do you kind of get through taking care of all the things you got to take care of in the household with the kids, whatever responsibilities you have, and still carve out some time and space for you to take care of yourself so you're still able to give?
It's I made myself a promise last year that I wasn't gonna sit on the couch every single day. I do sit on the couch some days, but getting my nails done, I go every 2 weeks, and the kids are at school, and it's just kind of like time for me. It's an hour, but it's an hour that I'm disconnected and I can go do that. I have a really great network of friends who, from the beginning, tried to get me out of the house. We would go have lunch together, or we'd go have dinner together. And getting that, knowing when you should and shouldn't ask for the help, I think is become important. Knowing that, hey, I'm going to go out with a few friends, and it's not just a babysitter, but maybe the kids can sleep over. So then I come home and I just kind of have a night and then I wake up and do it. And sometimes people don't have that. So I think just finding those moments, whether they're in school or just, a birthday party or anywhere that you could just kind of separate and be by yourself. Even if I have a friend who lost her husband a few years ago. She has a babysitter come once, twice a week, once every week, every other week. She'll sit in her car and have dinner sometimes. But she's by herself, sitting in her car, just relaxing, listening to music. And you don't realize how helpful that can be. I live near the beach. So I've driven down to the beach and just had my Starbucks and stared at the water for a little while and came back home and, done what I needed to do. So yeah, any little thing, reading a book outside, those moments I think are important.
I was wondering if you have drawn on faith in this journey, because that's something a lot of people also rely heavily on.
I will say that we weren't a very religious family beforehand. I think that there's always somebody there not looking over us. I believe Billy is an angel looking over us. And I feel like you kind of you honor that and we honor that in our own way, whether it's to go to the cemetery and visit or just kind of have our own words with whoever we believe in and just say, like, listen, sometimes it's screw you, what did you put me in, get me into, and then other times it's thank you, I needed that moment. So I think everyone has their own connection, and I think finding that connection is important.
Thank you for being honest about that.
Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts or topics or areas we didn't cover that you'd like to speak to, Kristina?
No, I think we really, we run the gamut, right? And I feel like I'm running a marathon. I'm not a runner, but I'm learning how to run this marathon. Having the foundation has truly been a blessing for me because it's getting this word out there and it's keeping Billy's name alive. On top of helping those families, one thing I forgot to say is we're actually even in the process of setting up a family room in a transplant center in Billy's honor. Because again, talking about finding that time, one of the things I felt was needed when Billy was in the hospital was a place to go decompress. I would find these little places to hide, alcoves and places in the hospital to hide. Because, especially the first 36, 48 hours, I felt like I couldn't even, go to the bathroom by myself. There's always somebody there, which is great because they wanted to catch me if I fell. But then I was like, you know what, I need a minute. And I would find these little places to go have a minute. So I feel like a family room is a place to have a minute. And it's also a place that if you have children, they can be there. They can play games. They can relax. They can sit with an animal. They're not always sitting in a hospital room with wires and monitors and all of this other, equipment and people coming in and out with all this language and verbiage that you may have no idea about. So that is really exciting for us. And we have a big event coming up in April. We have a gala for anyone in the New York area. And one of the facts is the FDNY is the largest contributor to the bone marrow bank in the country. And the reason why I say this is because every Proby class has a donor day. And I come and talk about organ donation. I've done four, I'm up, my fifth class is coming up, 4 classes so far. They have a blood drive and they swab for bone marrow. And they've been doing this since the early 90s. And if you go to headquarters, they have a list of all the firefighters who have donated bone marrow over the years. And we realized that organ donation is so important, but also bone marrow and blood saves lives too. So Billy's favorite number was 88. So on 8/8 in 2025, we're going to be launching donor days with different departments across the country to open up their bay doors, even police departments, community centers, whoever wants to be involved, and have those donor days where we get more registered donors in all of those areas. So that's something else that I think is really important to mention, that it's kind of become a part of our journey, is to think of other ways in which our message is getting out and other people are getting themselves involved as well.
Incredible mission. And for someone who wants to find out more about the foundation and your work, where can they find you on social media or the internet?
We're on BillyMoonFoundation.org, and we're Billy Moon Foundation on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, fantastic. Kristina, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story and your perspective and getting into those hard conversations, which are so well needed in our profession and especially with the loved ones who, are on a ride along with anybody who's a first responder. So we appreciate you so much for being willing to share that with us.
Thank you so much for having me. All this means a lot.
Well, thanks for your vulnerability and thanks for helping our listeners, because even if one person rethinks what they're doing at this time after listening, then we've done our mission, but I have a hunch there'll be a lot more.
I agree. Thank you.
Remember to like and subscribe YouTube, Responder Resilience, Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and Responder TV. We're on LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Go to our website, respondertv.com, for past episodes and guest information. Until the next time, stay safe, be kind to yourself. Take care.